last time I think we got a chance to talk with you guys was right before the Olympic trials, and wow, what an impact either some of our current student athletes and also Texas X's of making what everybody considers the hardest team in the world to make, and that being the U.S. national team. And so it's been kind of a quick turnaround for some of our athletes. They got a chance to go and compete up in Edmonton, Canada. We've had a few people that competed this past weekend down at Rice, and then even Morlake Kinnison and Ashley went over to Monaco and to London to hit the last two Diamond League competitions. But the process right now, all of the U.S. athletes, not just track and field, but anybody representing the U.S., they go to Houston. That's where the USOC has their team processing set up. And then for the athletes that need a place to train, then up at Prairie View A&M is where they have the U.S. track athletes stay in. They've got medical, brand new track, brand new equipment. So it's been a great setup and stuff. A little bit hotter than what it will be in Rio and stuff, but the resources are there, and that's an important part right before they get ready to head down. And whether they're flying from across the U.S. or leaving from right there at the training camp, everybody will connect through Houston and head down to Rio. So, open it up for some questions.
Coach, overall, how did you feel about your athletes' performances at the Olympic trials?
Well, it's amazing. We talked, I think, early on. It was unfortunate for people like Sonia Richards or for Trey Hardy, Leah Manzano. That I don't want to say that they're old, but by track age, they're getting to the end of their careers and stuff. And so you're pulling for people like that to make another Olympic team, but at the same time, you had some really, really up and coming talent that took advantage. And it was great to see somebody like Byron Robinson with the year that he's had, to persevere and to make that Olympic team. That's a special moment. Morlake was just lights out. We talked about as well. I think that was an advantage for a lot of the athletes that were used to running at conference meets, regionals, nationals, where it was round after round. And, she handled it like a professional that she is. And, was a little concerned for Ashley Spencer because coming off the first round, she got put in lane 1. That's a very tough lane to maneuver with, over the barriers, but, she made it to the final. And, you could just see the determination in their face to make that. Probably one of the most impressive performances for me was watching Ryan Krauser, being from the state of Oregon and winning the Olympic trials and stuff with one of the top throwers in the world right now. So it was there were some great things all around, and not just with our, with our U.S. athletes. Jamal Wilson, one of our former high jumpers, made the Bahamian team. Sanaje was very close to making the relay pool there for Jamaica, and then but Chris Ann Gordon making it in the 4x4 relay pool for Jamaica as well. So it'll be great to see.
Maura, how did Courtney respond? And she had it was kind of interesting the way she was in the heat with Sonia when Sonia went down and felt maybe that was the passing of the torch to her, and then she didn't fall. How did she respond after that?
Well, there was a lot of disappointment, and that's where, I know that Tanja does a great job, behind the scenes and picking every one of those athletes up, win, lose, or draw. My conversation with her was, it's a great thing that you're still part of the relay pool. She's going to get some really, really valuable experience. But when you're in that Olympic trials final, especially in the sprints in the United States, it's darn near like an Olympic final. And, when you have people like Allison Felix, who is the best of the best, I mean, not just for us in the United States, but throughout the world, race tactics, things change a little bit. And what you were able to maybe do as a collegiate athlete, now you're with equal caliber. And, if you're off just a little bit, it's the difference between being in the top 3 and being 4th, 5th, or 6th. But it will be great for her to be a part of this because she's very, very young. And, what she learns in this type of setting is going to help her next year in London at the World Championships and more importantly, 4 years from now at the next Olympic Games, because she has a long career ahead of her in track and field.
Well, how do you think Ryan does stack up on the world stage?
Ryan, the great thing about him is he doesn't ever get ahead of himself. After he completed his master's degree, he went out to the Olympic Training Center in San Diego, and he doesn't have to utilize a lot of competitions to really hone in to fine-tune his technique, and that's always been the great thing for him. Where a lot of the throwers chose to go, to Europe and throw in a few more meets, he chose to go back to San Diego. For any thrower and stuff, they don't want a whole lot of weight fluctuation. So the Olympic Training Center has a great nutrition staff, great facilities and stuff there. And their qualifying and final, both for the men, also for Michelle Carter for the women, will be prelims in the morning. There's about a 5-hour break, and then they come back in the evening for the final. And so when they are, looking at those schedules, the big question right now is, what is it going to be like with transportation going from the Olympic Village to the warm-up venue? And so, rehearsing those things even right now in the training setting is very, very important. And then also, too, you get 3 throws in the qualifying round. Top 12 will advance to that evening's final, and then they get 3 throws, and then it goes from 12 to the final 8. And so there's a lot of lag time in between. It's a lot different in a Olympic setting because you're not out there getting multiple throws for 30 or 45 minutes. You might, only get 2 throws for warm-ups, and that's it. So his attention to detail is very, very, very good. Michelle Carter, obviously, with her experience. And I think the great thing about the United States, is even people like Reese Hoffa, Adam Nelson, that have, won medals, they were the first to come to me as the throws coach for the U.S. team and, just talk about some of those experiences to pass along to those young men, because it is different. When you walk in the Olympic Stadium, and this has been your dream growing up for any event that you're competing in, you do. It's just kind of sticking with what you did to get there. Easier said than done, but it was great that those some of our best all-time throwers were willing to reach out and help everybody across the board.
There's obviously been a lot of criticism already of Olympic Village and where the athletes are staying and that kind of stuff. Have you noticed your athletes taking more of the, I don't really care, I'm going to the Olympics, that stuff won't matter to me, or is there serious concern about the way things will be handled for you?
I think it starts with the USOC. They've this has been years in the making, where they've gone down for them to set up the actual training site at the naval base there in Rio. So that way, at least leading up to the Olympic Games, the training facility for the track and field athletes, they'll bring in U.S. chefs, food, weightlifting, equipment, the whole 9. So it should be business as usual. But at the end of the day, it's easy to look at reports that come out, but I think that the great thing for us as a staff is that we are passing along as much information to the athletes, to their personal coaches as we get it. And at the end of the day, the meet's going to go on. And if you get caught up in those types of things, you let your anxiety levels, get out of kilter, then it's going to throw you off of your performance. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because there's never any guarantees down the road. And I think, whether they're young or veterans and stuff, it's our job as a staff. Thankfully, we have some tremendous sponsors from USOC with the USA Track and Field staff and our, governing body that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that no matter what, they're ready to perform at the highest level.
Has anybody expressed any of the athletes expressed anything to you of concern, or are they?
No, when people made the team in Eugene, we would do kind of the USA Track and Field processing at that time the next morning. And you were getting a chance to meet them, meet their coaches if you didn't already know them. And then the next step was finding out what these next few weeks were going to be like leading into the games. For some, they felt like, training, for example, like Ryan Krauser back at the training center was going to be more than sufficient. For others, they knew coming into Houston, processing, and then going to Prairie View, where there is, every medical facet you can think of. So again, I think that it's, they realize the task at hand, and, it's one of those situations you don't want to get caught up in what you read about or on the media and stuff. There's people that have already been sent out. Our head coaches and the team managers leave on Thursday, and so they'll get a lay of the land, and as we get information, again, that's when we start passing it on to the athletes and to the personal coaches.
I remember the London games, it was a big deal about how McDonald's was inside the training center and all that. I mean, for the USOC, isn't it kind of like a bubble, essentially, for the US athletes?
They do. They'll there's, when I say this is years in the making, I mean everything from the accommodations to security to providing, the very best. I mean, part of that medical staff also includes nutritionists for each of the sports. Because it's, when people are going to the training venues or on their competition days, there is never a stone left unturned when you're at this level. So we're very fortunate as a country to have the resources and that support, no matter where we would be going for the Olympic Games.
Coach, what do you think about the United States qualifying system? I know Kenny Harrison just broke the world record this past weekend in the hurdles. What are your thoughts on the current qualifying system?
It's been in place for as long as I can remember, and I think being a collegiate coach, when you have athletes preparing for that, it's no different than the system that we run. You look at outdoors, you got to go head-to-head at the regional meet to advance to the championships, to the NCAA finals. So most of our athletes have been through that type of format. And you start looking at some of the events, it's not uncommon. Where some of the best in the world sometimes get left out. I remember, going and watching the '92 trials, and Dan O'Brien was the best out there. And you think back to the Dan and Dave commercials that were on Reebok, and here he no heights in the vault, and you could just hear the air go out of the stadium. And he later on went in that September and broke the world record, but he also came back 4 years later in Atlanta and was the gold medalist. And so I think sometimes it's by those experiences, not making the team. I don't know the young lady, personally, but it was great to see for the sport, her breaking a world record that has been long-standing. But at the same time, I know that she, from the University of Kentucky, knowing a lot of the hurdlers that did make the team and stuff, I mean, she's going to be their number one fan, for them to be on the podium. All right. Thank you all.